Hello everybody, this is trainz here. Today we're going to start a new list that has been highly requested by some of you. This list is going to consist extinct American steam locomotives. A quick side note for this list, since there's 20 steam engines, I split this documentary into 4 parts, so this means 5 locomotives for each part. But when I do this list, I'm not going to be doing this list alone, as I have 2 very special guests joining me. Before I introduce the 2 people helping me, roll the intro. First, we have Mogami here, which has been shown, and he has helped me out with my top 12 retired steam excursion star list.
Hey there, Brendan's Trainz viewers. It's Mogami here, and thank you for inviting me here today. It's such a pleasure to be working with my friend.
Now, the second person is new here. This is the first time I decided to include him to one of my videos. I want you to meet BDvids here, which I'm going to put his channel in the description, and make sure to check out his channel. It does really cool stuff.
I'm BDvids, and welcome to this list. Alright, let's get this list started, shall we?
Alright, let's begin with number 20. The new Haven I5s. These gorgeous streamlined Hudsons were first built in 1937, and in total 10 engines were built, and they were numbered 1400 to 1409. They were built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works, and their streamlining was designed by Otto Cooler. These locomotives were designed to look sleek, but their streamlining didn't get in the way of maintenance. These locomotives worked the Merchant Limited between New Haven and Boston on 24 daily trips. With a boiler pressure of 285 psi and a driver diameter of 80 inches, these locomotives could produce 43,968 pounds of tractive effort. The interesting side note is that engines 1401 to 1404 had Timken roller bearings, while the rest of the engines had SKF roller bearings. Unfortunately, despite the I5's reliability, these 10 engines unfortunately were all cut up by 1951. These engines would have been the perfect candidate to be saved, and they could have been the only surviving New Haven steam locomotives. But since they scrapped the I5s, there is currently no surviving New Haven steam locomotives.
Number 19. The Chesapeake Ohio K2 Mikados. In the early 1920s, the Chesapeake Ohio was looking for a new locomotive to haul heavy freight and passenger trains, as the traffic on the C&O increased after World War I. So, the result was 50 282 Mikados built in 1924. Their numbers were 1160 to 1209. And unlike most Mikados, they were built with the air compressors on the front of the smokebox, which is pretty interesting. With a driving wheel diameter of 63 inches and a boiler pressure of 185 psi, they could produce 63,000 pounds of tractive effort, which is very impressive. And these locomotives were mainly used for freight and passenger trains on the C&O. And even when the Chesapeake Ohio T1s came into the picture, the K2s still pulled passenger and freight trains. But sadly, starting in the early 50s, all the K2s were retired and scrapped. But one engine almost made it into preservation, number 1189. After its last run in 1952, it was put in the scrap line in Clinton Forge, Virginia. But it was rebuilt due to a power shortage on the C&O. For 2 years, this engine ran between 1954 and 1956, pulling freight trains. But after that, she was once again retired and put back on the scrap line. And after many years of being exposed to the elements, number 1189 was sadly cut up in the mid-70s, which is honestly kinda sad, in my opinion.
Number 18. Southern Pacific MT4 482s. The second to last of the Southern Pacific MT series 482 mountain type locomotives, the MT4s were built by the Sacramento shops of the Southern Pacific between 1926 and 1927. 21 of these useful MT4s were built. They were numbered 44 4346 to 4366. The MT4s were known to have the skyline casing added to the engines, but two of the class, 4344 and 4348, lost the skyline casing after being involved in accidents in the 1940s. Sadly, like the other MT series, the MT4s did not make it out the scrapper's torch.
Number 17. The Southern Railway TSClass Mountains. In the early 19-teens, the Southern Railway needed a locomotive that can haul freight trains and passenger trains at high speeds. Their 282s normally handled the freight trains, while some of the older PS-class Pacifics handled the passenger work, but they needed an engine that can work in between there. In 1917, the Southern Railway decided to purchase 23 TSClass 482 locomotives. These engines were numbered 1450 to 1472, and all of them were built by Baldwin. Then, 2 years later, the Southern Railway purchased more engines, numbered 1475 to 1489, built in 1919. Then finally, in the same year, 10 more engines were built, and they were numbered 1490 to 1499, except they were built by Alco. The first 23 engines had 69-inch diameter driving wheels, a 200 psi boiler, and this gave the profound effect of giving the engines 50,290 pounds of tractive effort. Then the later engines, 1475 to 1499, they also had a 200 psi boiler and 69-inch diameter driving wheels. However, they could produce 53,883 pounds of tractive effort. These locomotives were seen pulling the famed passenger trains on the Southern and occasional freight service. In fact, these engines were also given the green and gold paint scheme like the PS4 class Pacifics. Unfortunately, the Southern Railway was one of the first major railroads to dieselize. These 48 engines were retired between 1952 and 1953, and all 48 locomotives were sadly cut up for scrap. Honestly, this is one class of 482 locomotives I would like to have seen preserved. The green and gold paint scheme really suits these engines. They would also make a good running mate to Southern 4501 and Southern 630. Maybe someday, someone will build a full-scale replica of one of these engines.
Number 16. The Chesapeake Ohio T1s and the Pennsylvania Railroad J1 210-4s. These locomotives kind of deserve to be together because one led to the development of another. Now, history. In the early 1930s, the Chesapeake Ohio needed a more powerful locomotive to haul coal trains. So, they tested a 284 Berkshire and decided they want an extra pair of driving wheels. So, that created a 210-4 Texas type. In total, 40 of these massive locomotives were built, number 3000 to 3039. With a boiler pressure of 260 psi and a driving wheel diameter of 69 inches, these things could produce 91,584 pounds of tractive effort, which is really impressive. They were mainly used to haul 13,500-ton coal trains between Russell, Kentucky and Toledo, Ohio, even as well as in Virginia. Fast forward to the 1940s, and the Pennsylvania Railroad was kind of in the same situation. They needed a new locomotive to haul heavy trains, but the wartime restrictions denied the PRR the chance to build a new locomotive. So, they tested a Norfolk and Western Class A and a Chesapeake Ohio T1 to see which one was the better performer. In the end, the T1 was the best performer, so between 1942 and 1943, the Pennsylvania Railroad made a total of 125 of their own 210-4s, known as the J1s and the J1As. Sadly, both of these 210-4s weren't preserved, with the Chesapeake and Ohio engines being retired between 1952 and 1953, and the PRR J1s and J1As being retired between 1957 and 1959, which is really sad because I'm honestly a big fan of big steam locomotives.
Hello everybody, this is Brendan's Trainz here again. I'm just going to tell you guys it's going to take me a while to finish part 2, 3, and 4. I don't know when I'm going to get working on them or when I get them done, simply because school's coming up and I only have a few more days left before I go back to school. This means I can't do long videos that much anymore for a little bit, simply because I've focused more on schoolwork. But I will be posting little videos here and there. I also want to give a big thanks to every single one of you for subscribing and watching my stuff on my channel. I have 176 subscribers right now. I never thought I'd ever get to this far, so I want to thank every single one of you for subscribing to my channel. Anyways, that's it for now. This is Brendan's Trainz, signing off.